Good morning, everybody. A very warm welcome back to the International Conference, Cybersecurity Conference. I have here with us a very, very special guest, Shri Atanu Chakraborty. Shri Atanu Chakraborty has served the government of India for a period of 35 years as a member of the Indian Administrative Service. He retired as a Secretary, Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance. I shall present here a short summary of his magnificent contributions to the government of India that has been instrumental in the country's progressive development. His work has included economic policy making for Union of India, including policies with respect to budget formulation, its passage in Parliament, as well as fiscal management, financial market management. He has also managed external finance through management of interface with multilateral and bilateral institutions. As Secretary of Department of Investment and Public Asset Management, he has directly handled disinvestment of state-owned enterprises. One of the largest disinvestment drives in India was led by him. He worked as a regulator of upstream hydrocarbon sector of India as Director General of Hydrocarbons that saw policy reforms that has changed the sector as we see it today. He has managed economic policy, tax policy, and budget management for the state of Gujarat as Secretary to the government of Gujarat. He has also served as India's governor on board of World Bank, member of Central Board of Directors of RBI, served as a chairperson National Infrastructure Investment Fund, and served as a managing director on the boards of Gujarat State Fertilizer and Chemicals, Gujarat Alkali Chemicals Limited, GSPC, GSPL, Gujarat Gas Limited, and GSFS, in addition to being the member of board of various public sector and private sector companies over the span of 2.5 decades. He directly contributed to some of the key legislations by conceptualizing, drafting, and advocating them. Some of them include framework legislation for public-private partnerships for the state of Gujarat, legislation for regulating transmission and distribution of natural gas, a unified regulator for International Financial Center, IFSC. He has just not been a policymaker at the highest level, but also has operated and grown commercial entities across infrastructure and industry. He is also serving on the board of HDFC Bank as its part-time chairman and independent director. He is well recognized for his contribution to economic and social sector. He is also a very prolific writer. In spite of so many accomplishments, Sir's sharp yet humble personality that exemplified in the numerous interactions I've had with him has been so spectacular. I'm so grateful, sir, for you taking your time from your busy schedule and being with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Chetan. You have been very kind. It's a pleasure and an honor to be present in InCTF conference, and I thank the Center for Cybersecurity and Network, Amrita Vishwa Vidyapith, for inviting me to speak on cybersecurity for banking and financial service industry. Henceforth, I'll continue to refer it as BFSI or plain financial institution for the sake of brevity and possibly save time. I'll attempt, with your permission, Dr. Chetan, to finish my talk within 20-22 minutes and leave about 8 to 10 minutes for of the allotted time for question answer, if there are any. I understand there is one already, and so I'll take them up, which will make it for a little bit more interactive. I'll sort of try to provide a background as to what presents this, the cybersecurity itself as a risk for financial sector, the kind of mitigation measures which are there, how the threat scenario is being seen, and I'll not say a possible roadmap for the future, but certainly how we need to evolve ourselves to face this very critical threat. I'm so glad that this part of the entire IT landscape, hitherto neglected in our part of the geography, is receiving its due attention. And it was really my pleasure and an honor, as I said before, to be here. Data, as a lot of people have been referring as the new oil, is perhaps the most valuable commodity today. The growing importance of data has also brought threats for safekeeping this data, as all of you are aware. Globally, more than 4.7 people are connected via internet, and India, this number is 700 million and growing. That itself underscores a great opportunity that this internet connectivity offers, but also highlights the challenges. Let's look at a bit of a history to the challenges that come to the data security itself. In early 19s, the headlines were largely on computer virus outbreaks. I still remember one would carry floppies which were infected, subsequently the USB ports which got infected, and then came spyware, malware, and with the internet spreading, we have already moved to the days of ransomware, demand of payment to unlock data, and so on and so forth. However, last 2 years has seen an exponential rise in this threat. In the wake of pandemic, digital footprint of the workforce increased manifold due to remote working of or always on mode. People also shifted quickly to digital mode for doing their transactions. Hackers have taken advantage. They've also taken advantage of sometimes gullible users and also systems which are today perhaps not fully geared to face the kind of threat which hackers are posing. And that has led to many more vulnerabilities getting exploited, frauds taking place, people's money being taken away. And with the adoption of cloud and many other intrusive digital strategies, if I may use that word, the vulnerabilities have only increased. Just to give you a flavor of how this has gone up, World Economic Forum estimated that in 2020, the malware and ransomware attacks increased roughly between 360 to 435%. Perhaps this number would be much larger, but that just gives an idea as to how large these attacks and how pervasive they have become. To just look at few of the major events that have occurred around cyber incidents related to security. Facebook faced very recently data loss of about 550 million users, roughly. Then there was, and if anybody thinks that it's only in the cyberspace, not connected to the physical world, I guess they need to revise their opinion. The oil prices went up when the colonial pipeline, if I remember the word correctly, on the northern and eastern coast of northern side of US and the eastern coast, which connects that part where the oil movements were large. That pipeline was brought down by dark side, led to a whole lot of disruption in the US economy, the physical economy part, I think of it this way. And we hear about Chronos, and now recently I'm told about something happening around Log4j, the vulnerabilities which have come from Java, which is perhaps so pervasive in its use and its library being hacked. And I'm told that subsequent versions are even finding it difficult to cope with. So this is the kind of threat scenario which most of you are aware, I'm sure. However, they are equally applicable to the financial world as well. Availability of digital technology, as I mentioned before, internet banking, mobile money, payment systems based wallets, online investments, trade debit cards, which we are all aware are the cornerstone of financial inclusion, have made our life very easy. The access has become very easy, and that has led to the huge surge in financial transactions. And India has not been untouched by the pervasive impact of digital technologies. Demonetization. India, it happened post demonetization towards digital payment. In India, it virtually achieved an exponential rate of growth, availability of cheap internet data in the cities, large smartphone availability. All these have become, and subsequently COVID-19 has led to huge growth in digital transaction in India. Actually, India now leads the world. 27 billion digital transactions in India in financial space in 2021. China was a distant second at roughly about 8. And USA was far behind. Not to say that the volumes money-wise in India are not that large, because our economy is roughly 30 times smaller than US economy if we compare it on the basis of per capita income. However, India is growing very fast. This year, the rate of growth is 8.5%. So digital transaction being large, economy growing fast, you can understand that how the amount of transaction volume money-wise is likely to grow as the time progresses. And I'll just give you a flavor of how digital transactions have pervaded the entire financial transaction space. UPI, you have all heard, almost all of you are somewhere or the other using one wallet or the other, which is using the UPI. HDFC Bank alone has a share of 15% of the total digital transaction in the country. And 71% of its own transactions are happening. That is, the transactions which are done by the bank with any of its customers, internal, external, are digital. And those which are not digital are also half digital, like you're drawing cash from an ATM, actually opens you up somewhere to some amount of a cyber attack or something. Now, this adoption has improved ease of doing business for financial institutions, customers, improved financial inclusion for a poor country like India in ways which the paucity of time, possibly I'm not able to share those examples. I would love to do it someday, but it's been a tremendous boon. However, the cyber threats cannot be ignored. All your purses are open because you are there in this cyberspace. The share of suspected fraudulent digital transaction attempts in India between 20 to 21 increased on the digital space by about 30%, roughly about 28.3%. Whereas the actual frauds in the banking decreased by 15%. So you see the people who are the con men, where they are fixing their sites, and they are intelligent people. The real-time payment scams are on rise, include confidence tricks, identity theft, digital wallet, accounting hack, and so on and so forth. Another trend we have seen is emergence of fintech. They have leveraged technology to deliver solutions in credit disbursal, payments, e-commerce, insurance, and myriad other themes. Who of you have not used the Rhoda? All of you have heard of Paytm, and so many unicorns are actually large number of them do come from the fintech space. However, their platform, while they offer great opportunity, their vulnerability can be exploited by unscrupulous elements. This scenario, which I have just in brief tried to paint, shows that India, like the rest of the world, perhaps more so, because I still feel, and that's my personal view, and I see its evidence almost everywhere, we are not so conscious of cybersecurity. Opens us up to threats, vulnerability, and incidents. And therefore, the criticality of protecting the cyberspace for BFSI, it's so very high. And I guess in that sense, I see today's talk, the topicality of today's talk. Otherwise, if we allow rampant intrusions, someday some incident is going to give a very rude jolt to the economy. Now let's look where the threats are generally coming from. I'll just give you a few trends in that. One is on the financial institution side, and the other is on the customer side. On the institution side, there has been a very fast adoption of cloud-based technologies. It has its own benefit in terms of agility, speed, as well as ease of moving your data, the storage, and also bringing up the applications very quickly. However, they bring their own threats, especially when we talk about public cloud. It's a great concern. There are techniques like bring your own key, dedicated tenancy, and many other areas where cloud security world over people are looking at, and so are in India. However, while it's an opportunity, it's a great threat. Ransomware is a threat which is common, is also known as malware, has been one of the deadliest attacks, has been seen globally are on the ransomware. India is the 6th most affected country as per a Google report. And half of the companies in the survey, somewhere or the other, suffered multiple ransomware attacks. Now, this being the case, there are a lot of countermeasures for protecting the servers and the endpoints through anti-malware signatures, behavior-based detection, application control, whitelisting solutions, and so on and so forth. And I guess the list is endless. However, its application and investment in it is not so pervasive. The other is denial of service, where an application is crippled and the associated IT infrastructure by launch of continuous attack. And the other problem is a remote workforce risk, where people are using their devices which are unprotected, and they open themselves up to a lot of risks. On the side of customer, the major risks come from phishing and vishing. This is one of the most rampant manner in which customers of the banks, insurance companies, fintechs, you name it, have been impacted. In phishing, attackers send mails with spoofed website links, and gullible customers or even knowledgeable customers now, assuming this to be genuine website clicks, tend to click it, and then the problem starts. Now, there have been a lot of, this requires a lot of outreach, a lot of awareness before the relationships are onboarded, but then it's a continuing issue. The other is skimming. Fraudsters use skimmers and install them at offsite ATMs, POS machines, that is point of sales machines, and thereby try to capture the card data. Magnetic strips are being replaced by EMV chips to counter this. However, I'm sure there is going to be a constant battle there as well. The challenges which I find that the financial service industry, not very different from the challenges that the rest of the industry also faces, but it's more so in the financial services industry, is lack of automation in the security processes, lack of user awareness, complex zero-day threats, more and more vulnerabilities getting defected as quickly, especially within the old legacy systems. And because of high level of regulation in the space of financial systems, legacy systems, you can't junk it overnight. You have to change it so that the entire nerve system of economy doesn't come crashing. That itself poses a big threat. Then there are early detection of incidents has not been very easy. And of course, the complexity crisis in the security, and above all, and I consider that that's one of the most biggest problem, because hollowing out each and every financial institution tries to become very thin and tends to react or interact with other platforms through API. Now, the API usage itself is many times open to risk, has a whole lot of vulnerability, their check, onboarding of third parties. These are the areas where a lot of vulnerabilities come in and threats come in. And preventing them sometimes impacts the business. So it is the balancing of fast spread of business vis-a-vis keeping them secure and safe is a constant balancing act that the business leaders, especially in the financial space, have to do. Generally, what are the paradigms that financial services have implemented? They follow the three pillars that protect, detect, and respond. It is largely, I would say, a very, very reactive mechanism that is happening today. However, I would come down to certain new techniques that are developing where one is becoming slightly more proactive. However, some of the strategies which are following are non-use of unauthorized softwares, especially on the open source, which has been a great source of innovation. There is a need to check them before onboarding those softwares. Administration of user ID and password management, one of the simplest things, people tend to share their passwords, just pass them around like prasadam. However, this prasad is not the best kind of a thing that can happen to your systems. Anti-ransomware control, patch management. Now, patch management has impact on both sides. Many times patch management tend to even weaken your security or weaken your system. So, but then to sort of quickly understand, and now I guess the technologies are fairly advanced to understand how each patch is going to impact the system. Therefore, to my mind, patch management, handling it and quickly implementing a patch is actually a key to keeping the system safe from external threats, and data leakage protection, and of course, rogue mobile applications and taking down of phishing websites. And lastly, focused user and customer awareness is the other bit of strategy. From the regulator's side, RBI has taken lead. It has a very strong group which through regulation is pushing lots of cyber security related protections for the banks and non-banking financial institutions. However, the same is not true of the fintechs because they are not fully regulated. And as I mentioned before, there's always a trade-off which people tend to see between security and business. I don't see this as a trade-off, frankly. Ultimately, if the customers start losing, that trade-off just vanishes in a day, and people will look at more credible, sound, and boring systems than systems which are swanky, glamorous, but unsafe somewhere. However, many entrepreneurs, especially the upcoming ones in the fintech space, and I'm not criticizing them one bit, they have really unleashed a revolution. Need to understand that security needs to be built in as much with slightly overemphasis than an underemphasis because they are unregulated. The regulated entities in any case have to follow, and perhaps they need to go beyond the regulatory requirements, whereas wherever the cyber security related issues come in because of its criticality to the entire operation, as I'd highlighted before. The banks, HDFC Bank is a leading one, but most of the banks have at least 50% of their operations which is digital in nature. And you can imagine how a single incident can wreak havoc. Now, I would just like to look at a very in a very helicopter fashion. Dr. Achyutan, you must tell me when my 20 minutes are over so that I go to question and answers. I'm coming to an end. Give me a few minutes. I see use of AI and ML as a very key step towards managing cybersecurity, especially trying to be one ahead by teaching the computers. However, this requires labeling of data, closely following the incidents, linking them to the database, developing those models, testing them. Very painstaking exercise. happening at many places in the world, happening in India also. We have the right kind of manpower. We have people who can understand it. However, investment of both time and money is needed in the techniques related to AI ML so that we can be one step ahead. Otherwise, right now, as I mentioned, we are more in a reactive mode than in a proactive mode. This is a strategy for being proactive. The other is development of IT operations with embedded securities known as DevSecOps. And the other one is development of embedded security processes and controls within the processes themselves. Automation of security processes like incident management. Incident management would always remain very key. A quick response in any incident also is a great learning exercise, whereas each incident needs to be followed by a root cause analysis and so on and so forth. Vulnerability management to reduce our time to response to an incident. Cloud security, I had alluded to the cloud issues before. And then, of course, the issues of real-time threat intelligence building, threat modeling, and cyber risk quantification has now become for financial sector a very important exercise. However, the data, time series data is lacking on this. People still don't share as much data in the regulatory space even. People are a bit loath to accept that their intrusions have taken place. Even labeling the intrusion is a bit difficult today, even if people wanted to do it. To that extent, risk quantification becomes very difficult. So we all say there is risk. And let's face it, let me just give you an idea as to what happens. The larger the risk, more capital has to be provided by the institution. And that much capital gets locked. So if the risk gets reduced, it's sort of mitigated in some fashion, that much capital gets released to be used for real financing purposes. And that's a key for cyber risk quantification, to my mind, the cornerstone for building up cybersecurity strategies. As I was mentioned, cybersecurity has become one of the major risks, as I just mentioned, about its quantification in the financial world, where unlike fraud, these threats make entire operation vulnerable. I gave some examples. It has been acknowledged so by the regulators and managements of the financial institutions as well. While digitalizing offers a great opportunity for financial inclusion, faster and easier transaction, but the system vulnerabilities need to be monitored closely. This becomes critical as new age fintechs are completely in the digital space with little backup in the physical world. We are actually talking about digital banks these days. Any disruption there can be catastrophic. While fintechs have grown at great speed, they have a soft underbelly that is prone to cyber risk. Perhaps greater regulation of these entities will improve their capability to ward off cyber attacks in future and make their growth easier and bring in many more technologies to the fore. Organizations actually need to build in cybersecurity capability into their IT organization as an embedded requirement. And I underline and make it bold. This capability needs to be built up within organization at the industry level. And when I say industry level, both for financial sector as well as the tech sector and at national level for overall regulation and governance. In short, IT security has to become part of corporate governance paradigm. That way, capacities would be built up to respond to constantly evolving threats. Needless to add, a strong outreach to staff and customers, educating them. I have not emphasized on this as much, but let me tell you, am I not mentioning this in greater detail doesn't reduce the emphasis about the threats and possible precautions that they need to take. There's a lot of education that's needed today regarding the possible threat which comes from phishing, from malware, from wrong clicking, and so on and so forth. And also clicking down a whole lot of web which can actually impose a lot of threat to people's devices, which have actually become their purses. So people need to be careful about their purses. Last but not the least, I see a strong coalition, both of financial sector and tech business, tech industry and academia as an imperative to counter the cybersecurity threat. Thanks very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir. That was quite enlightening. We do have a few questions for you, sir, if you don't mind.
Before that, you had sent me a question. With your permission, can I take up that question first? And then you may like to sort of tell me the other question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
Dr. Achyutan, you had referred to the Prime Minister's talk on the Davos World Economic Forum, where he had alluded to global effort is needed to deal with the problem posed by cryptocurrency. And the central bank has also voiced serious concern that it may impact financial stability. And my observations, I fully agree with what has been mentioned. I look at it in two ways. In fact, some way people say three ways, but let's put it for the sake of brevity. One is the tech part. The technology underlying it, blockchain, needs to be used separate from the product itself. Product is that cryptocurrency in its various avatars. Blockchain, wherever it's useful, we also need to understand its vulnerabilities, because blockchain does give us a much better trail than many other systems. Therefore, as far as systems go, using the technology, frankly, nobody will have a quarrel with it. However, coming to cryptocurrency itself, currency as a word is a sovereign requirement. So no sovereign is going to let go of it. On the financial side, cryptocurrency doesn't have any underlying. Like in derivatives, when we talk about forwards, options, and so on and so forth, we have share prices, commodity prices as underlying on which those bets, if I may use the words, are built up. Crypto is a pure speculative instrument. Therefore, as a financial instrument, I see it very debilitating as being speculative. Secondly, its possible usage and recorded usage in ransomware, demanding ransoms have been now fairly well recorded. And it also makes, terrorists tended to use fake currencies. Now they need not actually use it. They'll end up using cryptocurrencies if they had the validity of these things anywhere. While digital currencies are a far way off, but they will be regulated by the central banks. So that's my short observation on the gamut of cryptocurrency as an instrument does pose a serious threat to financial stability, and I don't think they have much of a space. But how to handle that is a larger question where perhaps time would be short to address that today. Thank you.
I believe Dr. Raghu has a question for you as well.
Atanu, thank you so much for your time today. And HDFC has a very large workforce and at varying levels of skills. And how are you thinking, planning, reskilling, upskilling them? And I'm sure this is happening already. How can an academic institution like Amrita can also prioritize those within our scheme of things, collaborate with an institution like yours?
I could not agree more with you, Dr. Raghu, when it comes for a collaboration. That's why I ended specifically that word as a collaboration between business and academia. It's very, very critical to keep ahead of the threats. In our bank, we are very mindful of, because we have people who are on the sales side, on the business side, and we have people who are on the tech side who are manning operations, and there are people who are building up applications. Largely, this is how the business gets divided. Therefore, we also have to have a very strong outreach within the organization on the security issues, which the organization is pushing very hard. They use things like comic strips, apart from regular boring emails, very interesting fashion of marketing internally on cybersecurity issues. And recently, the bank overhauled its system for internal operations to take care of issues like I had mentioned about whitelisting, issues related to usage of emails, passwords, by leakage of those passwords somewhere else. Because for the bank, the privacy of customer data remains paramount. Therefore, on the business side, small little things which prevent a lot of leakages also need to be avoided, and this comes from awareness. However, with institutions like your center, one would look at the solution side, where the application development takes place, and also bring in the manpower that we develop within our organizations. So I guess it's a two-way exercise which we look to, and I would certainly appreciate much larger collaboration between not only with your institution but the rest of the academy as well.
Thank you very much, sir.
These forums are a great way of bringing in. Perhaps next year, my bank should participate in much greater strength.
Yes.
Great, sir. So there is a question here on, there was a technology document released by RBI in September of 2020 for urban cooperatives, a vision document for cybersecurity, but how was the rural cooperative banks equipped to take on cyber threats? I'm not sure, sir, if this question you were able to, should I repeat this again? The vision document on cybersecurity, were the rural cooperative banks equipped to take on cyber threats? What is your thoughts on it?
Perhaps rural cooperative banks, or they have a structure of primary cooperative organizations, then they built into the taluka level institutions, district cooperative institutions, state level cooperative institutions, and that's how those cooperative banking institutions at the grassroots tend to operate. Yes, I agree. Possibly, if the best of the institutions today find themselves slightly less equipped, they are far less equipped than doing it. But they have an advantage, they are not so digital. But many of them are partially getting into this digital mode and trying to do it. Luckily, they are not as much, and I use the word luckily very, very consciously, into the mainstream financial architecture. Therefore, in that sense, they are all lying as separate island and operate as separate islands. To that extent, their vulnerabilities do not get exposed that they can pose a systemic threat. However, we need to sort of start addressing them as we upgrade them technologically. We'll have to start bringing solutions to upgrade them as well. So that's I hope I've been able to address the question to.
It's a tough question because it's not always easy to have the same solution for everybody, and like you correctly said, there may be different degrees of risks that any institution faces, and accordingly the solutions will have to be also customized. One last question, sir. I know that there are many other questions, but sir has very limited time, so as one last question, I think this is from Mr. Joydeep Nag. He asks, as the world becomes more algorithm dependent, it will also create a set of algorithm elites with very classified knowledge. How do you create democratization of this knowledge so that it becomes more egalitarian and less disparate and therefore less risky?
Very interesting. I guess that has virtually taken us to the world of the very philosophical space. I understand that the spread of knowledge, there are, this elite, and there is this elite which has developed the salary differentials that's also characterized by their lifestyles, small islands where they tend to be. Yes, that does create to some extent a particularly very elite group which does get separated from the rest. However, they cannot, unless they do get integrated with the rest of the systems, their knowledge spread doesn't take place. Therefore, this is a question I'll find it very difficult to address, because this is that elite which has the knowledge, which has built up that knowledge base, and the knowledge cannot be taken away because the incentive of building up that knowledge goes away. So we have to incentivize that knowledge. Today, that knowledge is incentivized by giving them restricted stock units, by ESOPs, by variable pay structures, and so on and so forth, which naturally cannot be dispersed to a larger group. However, they are sharing their knowledge, as people tended to do over the open source, had led to some amount of democratization, but there a lot of cyber threats and these things came up, which impacted the democratization. In any sense, if you see the real world, a threat always reduces democratization, and the cyber threat is bound to reduce democratization in the cyberspace or the cyber world also, and building up an elite. I guess these are the two strands which will continue to be there. There would be very dedicated people who are looking beyond self and will continue to share it to the world, but in a very safe fashion. I guess whatever we do, safety first should remain the credo. I do understand that question, Mr. Joydeep Nath. I don't know if I've been able to fully answer that, but I do see it's a very, very sort of is an existential issue where people tend to band together and get less democratic when there is a threat. And cybersecurity issues and vulnerability are real threats which create these kind of elites. Let's see. We'll have to wait for time to really answer this question.
Thank you very much, sir. There are a few more, but I think I will just send them to you, and as your time permits, if we can answer them, we will send them back to our attendees. With that, I would really like to express my gratitude to Shri Atanu Chakraborty for really spending time. He flew into another city today and just, after landing, just took our invitation to be at this conference amidst its busy schedule. We cannot thank you enough for being here with us and really enlightening us in the banking sector and security needs for them. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks very much. Thank you.